Andrew, a big week on not just monitoring the health front, but the economy. We've been wondering what Treasurer Frydenberg will have to say in terms of JobKeeper, and you've got some breaking news, some detail as to what the next phase of JobKeeper will look like.
Yes, Kieran, stage set for Thursday's budget update by the Treasurer Josh Frydenberg, and a retention of JobKeeper and an elevated job seeker rates from September 30 when they are due to end. They're both expected. The speculation has been around that JobKeeper will be retained but tapered off. There are two ways this could happen. You could reduce the $750 a week subsidy, perhaps initially to $650 per worker and down gradually from that, or you could change the turnover test to qualify for the subsidy. At present, for a business with a turnover less than $1 billion, this could be increased from the current qualifier of 30% decline in turnover. I've confirmed that the government is going to reduce the amount of the subsidy, but not the rate of the turnover test. Senior government sources have told me also that the Melbourne shutdown has been taken into account in the way this program has been reconfigured for this budget update. So the PM, Treasurer and Finance Minister were on their way to an outcome, and that has been altered to take the Victorian shutdown situation into account. It's a national program, JobKeeper, but it's been put to me that because it is demand-driven, businesses who are suffering more in Victoria will receive more. If you taper down JobKeeper, you'd have to expect the same would be happening to JobSeeker, although not to the original rate of the dole, Kieran. Josh Frydenberg on Sky News this morning was also talking about correcting this anomaly where people can actually earn more on JobKeeper than they did initially. Have a listen.
Some people under the program received more money in the form of this $1,500 flat payment than they were receiving prior to the crisis, and that's been one of the issues that we have looked at as a government and talked to Treasury about, and it's been the subject of their review as well. And what you'll see in this next wave of income support from the government is some modifications reflecting changes such as those.
But interesting, that news from Andrew Clennell this afternoon. The subsidy will be reduced. The turnover test will remain as it is. We'll get some more reaction throughout the afternoon to that, though. I do want to touch on this hour, Andrew, an interview you've done with the New South Wales Police Commissioner across a range of issues, and he's made some quite interesting remarks, let's say.
Yes, there's certainly a few lines out of there. You'll hear that interview shortly, but particularly we discussed the shutting of the New South Wales-Victorian border and just how long that could be in place, Kieran. Essentially, he's raised with me the prospect of other emergency services personnel helping the police and Australian Defence Force in terms of policing that border. Perhaps rural fire service personnel. We know what an undertaking it was, 650 police there at the moment. As I understand it, people have been lining up at the Victorian border saying they either want to get out of Melbourne, and that's the reason for their travel, or even occasionally that they want to play the pokies. Police turning hundreds of motorists back for such reasons. So you have New South Wales Police at the moment involved in quarantining hotels, policing the border, and potentially down the track policing more restrictions. Despite this, the Commissioner says police resources are not stretched. There are still hopes in senior New South Wales government ranks, Kieran, that with the border to Victoria shut, more shutdowns can be avoided. In the interview, you will see the Commissioner compare the difference in approaches on hotel quarantining between New South Wales and Victoria. He'll talk about that a Black Lives Matter protest being planned for Sydney that police are fighting in the Supreme Court could set New South Wales back economically 5 to 10 years, in his words. And I asked him about the investigations he's had to have his troops conduct into two Liberal politicians, Don Harwin and Angus Taylor, both of whom found themselves off the hook. In terms of the situation in Victoria, there is disquiet, Kieran, in the federal government at the way the Victorian government has handled it. Some diplomatic language at the moment from Scott Morrison, but the federal government was urging the Victorians to do suburb by suburb, postcode by postcode lockdowns days before they eventually took the action. people in the federal government believe that could have had a material effect. And there is a view Victoria did not do enough on contact tracing early in the piece. That's all on top of the quarantining bungle, of course.
Andrew, thank you for the update. We'll talk to you at the top of the hour.